Hi, good afternoon. Thanks, Eric. I'll talk to you today. Nobody else. A bunch of grouches. It's just because you got problems at home, you don't have to bring it to the office. All right. Excited about going to Chicago, Soldiers Field. We got the Shamrock Series back up and running after a couple years off. So pretty excited about that. I know our guys are, and certainly the competition, right? Playing nationally ranked Wisconsin football team, and a program that has been consistently amongst the very best in the country. Paul Chris does an incredible job. Year in and year out, their identity is about being smart, physical, ball control. They had 95 snaps against Penn State, controlled the football, and really, in a lot of ways, had that game in their control. They made some mistakes in the red zone, but really an outstanding football team. It's a veteran football team, a veteran offensive line that returns. Again, we talked about them controlling the line of scrimmage. They're in some instances we were talking about in the coordinators meeting this morning. They resemble Navy in so much that they control the clock and force you to be so efficient on the offensive side of the ball. And you got to get them off the field, and it's difficult to get them off the field. Graham Mertz, a quarterback, he's got all of the tools. He's got arm strength. He can run. He's athletic. He certainly has some weapons around him. Ches Malusi transfers in. He's an outstanding running back. They've got the physical, fullback and Ferguson at tight end, and veteran receivers that are smart and well coached. So you can see the theme here: smart and well coached, and that takes you to the defensive side of the ball. Jim Leonard, outstanding defensive coordinator, and he's got some big fellas up front. Starts with Benton at the nose, who's a great two-gap player. He'll be difficult. We'll have to do some things in terms of neutralizing him. He's very difficult, and I think as instinctive and disciplined of linebackers that we will see this year. So. Well coached, smart, disciplined, physical, all the things that we all know about Wisconsin, but they come to light every game you watch them. And so it'll be a great challenge for our football team, one that we're excited about. Again, going to Chicago, playing in Soldiers Field. Chicago's a great base for us and Notre Dame fans, so we're excited about that opportunity and certainly the challenge and the challenge of playing a very good Wisconsin team. So with that, we'll begin the questions.
John Finneran is up first.
Brian, I wonder if health-wise, team's in good shape?
Yeah, good shape. Bumps and bruises, typical for, a game that you play against a Big Ten opponent.
And, of course, one of the dynamics this week is you have your quarterback going up against his old school. Where does he factor in some things that you might be able to learn a little bit about Wisconsin and maybe utilize a little bit?
Yeah, you don't get too much intel, from those things in terms of, what he knows about Wisconsin. I'm not a big believer in that, like, hey, do you know the signals, or you got to play the game. Jack's a competitor. He loved his time at Wisconsin, but it's a new chapter for him, and he's like I said, very mature, level-headed. He wants to beat Wisconsin, but he wants to beat the following week Cincinnati, and the week after. So, I think we can make as much as we want and make it a story. In the building, it's not that much of a story to him.
Okay, my final question is, they're linebackers. They're big. I mean, they've got a kid 261 pounds, and one of their inside linebackers, and they'll, their front seven are going to give you a lot to handle on the
no
offensive
doubt
line.
We're still going to show up, though.
But your offensive line, how do you like what they did last week and the improvements that you made?
Yeah, I think, as you probably saw, we began to do some rotation. Andrew Kristofic got in the game. He's going to play some more. We're really pleased with the snaps that he's taken. I think he takes a little bit of the load off of, Zeke and Kane. Obviously, we're hoping to have Carmody back, which gives us some depth now at the tackle position where you can roll in, Carmody. Maybe you can give a blow to Tosh. And then Joe Alt, played a lot, and he played very well, by the way. And, we're in a position now to kind of assess, where does Joe fit the best? Is he that tight end, or can he do both for us? So we're in the process of figuring that out. But I think we're gaining some depth, where I think that'll help us a lot as we go through, this game. And again, as I mentioned before, we got to keep their defense on the field. We've got to be productive, and we've got to sustain some drives ourselves. And I think that last week Tosh got some confidence, playing against arguably those two ends are really good for Purdue, and they gained some confidence there. Yeah, we got beat on some, but I thought we got better.
Eric Hansen is next.
Brian, how is Tyler Buckner's hamstring responding to treatment, and also do you anticipate either having Prince or Sebo this week?
So Prince is available. We'll work him out today, and then we'll have a better sense and feel for him. Sebo is not available to us. And then Tyler, as I said, it was truly a tight hamstring. We didn't have a pull, one that we feel was, dangerous. But we're going to be aggressive in the treatment of it. So we'll see how he responds today. I think we'll have a really good feel for him tomorrow. We expect him to play, however, on Saturday.
You've had really good lines and some offensive lines and some that weren't, Joe Moore Award winner finalists, but there seems to be an evolution during the season.
Yeah.
With that process, what's maybe most valuable? Is it game situations and those guys kind of seeing everything similarly, or is it technique driven in practice? What drives that?
Well, certainly there's
evolution?
always the practice technique that they could use, but I think we're past that now. We're into game situations where, they need to gain those reps. That's where, Tosh is going to get better. That's where Zeke's going to get better. That's where, you're going to get Joe Alt better. Carmody obviously gets a handful of snaps and he gets injured. Obviously we lost Blake early. So, look, we are transitioning on the offensive line. But we are so excited about the young players and the veterans that are playing their butts off as we go through this, transition on the offensive line. Rocco Spindler's making great progress. So, it's one of those things where, we just have to be patient and work through the process. And, some guys are holding down the fort for us as we kind of grow up.
And then, Michael Carmody certainly had a long stretch where he could impress you to the point that he was coming into the season the third tackle. But is there a chance Tosh, through his gameplay, could become the priority of those two, or is it just kind of too early?
I would say that we regard the four tackles, all the young tackles, as future starters for us in some capacity. When we're talking about Tosh and we're talking about Blake and we're talking about Mike and we're talking about Joe, we're very blessed that we've got four young players that can play at a high level. Now, each one of them is at a different stage in that development. But I got to tell you, standing right here in front of you, they're not all ready, but when they are, we're going to be back to, talking about, man, that Notre Dame line, man, they're as good as anybody in the country, and that's going to happen.
Patrick Engel is next.
Brian, kind of going off that third and short last year, a heavy rundown for you guys. This year seems to skew more toward passing. When you look at that, do you feel like that's just kind of how it's going to go this year, given personnel and the passing success you've had in that? Or I guess kind of how do you see that playing out and what you've done there?
Yes and no. I mean, we were pretty good on our base dive play. We average about 8 yards. We had 1-0 play on our double team, duo play. We had a 57-yard run in there, but we were averaging about 6 yards. No, I'm not about to say, hey, every time we get in short yardage, we gotta pitch it around. No, we feel pretty good that we got some movement, and we feel good that a running game can be effective for us, which is run the ball when they know you're going to run it, run the ball down in the goal line situations, and run it when you've got to, end the game. And so, no, I think we're still, progressing towards where we want to be and having more balance within that running game. Absolutely.
Tim Priester, you're next.
Brian, of course, chunk plays are always important,
Yeah.
a little bit more important under the circumstances. You talk about keeping their defense on the field.
Well, I mean, certainly, the offense that we have, we feel like we've got some big play guys that can make plays. Now, did they make them on Saturday? No, they didn't make them to the level they're capable of. But you're going to have those things happen, and we still were able to overcome and make big plays in some other positions. But, yeah, part of this game is that we're going to have to make some big plays. There's no doubt about it. So that and, get off the field, against a team that wants to control the ball. So, kind of going back to what I said earlier, Tim, is that if you think about this as a Navy game, is that scoring touchdowns is at a premium. Kicking field goals is not going to get it done for you. So scoring touchdowns, being really efficient on the offensive side of the ball, and when you get matchups, you better win those matchups.
What were your points of emphasis with the senior receivers, Lindsey and Austin and Wilkins, coming out of this game?
Well, we'll meet with them today. I really haven't gotten a chance to sit down with them, honestly. We don't get that chance until today. Sunday's their day off. I don't try to, we send them confidence. Like, what do you say to a young man? I mean, he's made that catch 100 times, right? I mean, he feels probably worse than anybody else. There's 75,000 people. So you just say, hey, make a play for us, next time you get a chance. And he will. The preparation is where I concern myself the most, Tim. If they're not preparing the right way, then I'm all over them. Like, they can't move. But they worked their tails off. They had a great week. They just got to play better, and they will. They'll have a better game.
You flip-flopped your corners last week. Was that just a matchup with Bell, or is that something that you're continuing to look at?
No, you'll see more of that. We like Silu, just a little bit more experience. You get a lot more one-on-ones. There's a lot more contact and action closest to the ball there.
Just to clarify, Jack Cohn, does he have a year of eligibility next year, or does he not?
You know what? I haven't researched it, but now that I've been asked now a couple of times, I'll look that up, and we'll get our compliance people on it so I can answer that question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Your next question, you'll be coming from Zoom, and it'll be Dennis Dodd. Dennis, go right ahead.
Hey, Brian. Everywhere you go at Notre Dame, you're surrounded by history. Your next win's going to be a pretty big one. I just wonder where you think you will sit in Notre Dame history, accomplishing what you have, and what that means.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly where I sit in Notre Dame history. The coach that won more games that hasn't won a national championship. That's where I'll sit. Where I feel like we've done is we've played consistent football. We brought Notre Dame football back to its relevance of competing for championships. And each year you raise the bar. And you continue to build towards that goal of winning a national championship. And I think we have steadily worked towards that consistency year in and year out. Other than that, everything's judged and rightly so on winning national championships. So, and I have no problem with that. I knew that coming in.
Pete Sampson is next.
I want to ask you about something post-game that you do, and you've done this for 12 years, but like the getting into the room with your coaches and addressing them and setting a message before you talk to the players. I was interested, like, why that's important and just the process of how you formulate that message as you're walking off the field, like the things you're looking for, how you take notes during the game to figure out what you want to say.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Yeah, I think it's important that the entire group feels the same way after a win or a loss, and that we're not mixing the message to the team. I don't want a coach to feel like, really, I saw it this way. So I give all the coaches a chance to give me some feedback as to, what happened out there today. And it's not long, but it's enough where everybody gets a chance to give a little bit of input. And then I'm able to put together a consensus of what the message is after that win. Highlighting a particular player, there might be the defensive coaches may see it differently than I do. And I don't want to go out there and prop up a particular player and the entire defense staff goes, what's that guy thinking? So it's just really trying to get everybody on the same page right after the game. And so then the message becomes consistent when we're in the locker room and post-game.
Whether it's a win or a loss, I mean, these games can end, everyone feels kind of hot, right? Like,
Yep.
how are there moments that you're like, okay, that message was really important in this game, like where people were all over the place that come to mind for you?
No doubt. No doubt. I think in my experience, what they hear from the head coach or the leader of the program right after a win or right after a loss sets the way they're thinking throughout the entire weekend. And so I've always felt that is probably as an important time as there is when it comes to messaging.
And how long have you done that? Where'd you sort of get that idea?
I just felt like there were some years earlier in my career that maybe there were different thoughts about how the game ended and really what the narrative should have been. And what happens is you hear that, in the bathroom or in the hallway or you know what I mean. And so I never wanted that to be the case again. And I've probably been doing this for over 20 years. Yeah.
Tyler James is next.
Brian, Kyron Williams after the game talked about Joe Alton, said it sort of reminded him of Tommy Tremble last year in the role that he played in the offense. Now, I'm not sure that we're going to see Joe in some H-back situations or like a fullback, but I'm curious with what Tommy did last season, is that something that you're maybe interested in recruiting someone like that, more specifically someone that can play like an H-back role or even a fullback role for the offense?
I think there's always a place for somebody that fits that kind of role. And, obviously in our goal line package, J.D. Bertrand is that guy, but, he certainly can't be on the field.
When he's leading the team in tackles every game.
Yeah. Well, we have a new word for him, right? The best two-way player in the country. But I think you're right. And we're looking for that, in recruiting. Where's the versatility? But I will tell you this, the NFL's in the same situation. They can't find the inside linebacker, downhill player that can also duplicate that in the short yardage situation. That's why Tommy Tremble was such an important guy in the draft. So, yeah, I think everybody's looking for the same guy. If we can find one, we certainly would be on it.
What is the value or importance to your players in terms of playing in NFL stadiums? Is that something you sell to recruits? And then do you feel like the players get something extra out of that experience?
Yeah, I do. But we do it in its totality, right? We don't do it as a one-shot deal, but we do it more so over, a course of looking at our schedule over the last few years, how many NFL stadiums you'll get a chance. Coming to Notre Dame, you're going to get that kind of exposure and playing in all these NFL venues. So if you look at it over, a course of your 4 years here, you're playing in a lot of different NFL venues that you don't get anywhere else in the country. And our guys are excited about these opportunities. The Shamrock games are important to them. They see them a little bit differently, and especially when you're playing close to home in Chicago, they know they know the history there.
You spoke about Jack Cohn earlier and not too worried about him this week. When we've spoken to him, he doesn't seem to get very up or down. He seems very level. Is that how he's like all the time? Have you seen him get excited or down? Is he
No, I
consistent
got
like
after
that?
him pretty good on the sideline after a couple of passes that were a little bit off. But as I looked at it, the routes weren't great either. We needed to throw it a little better and run the routes a little bit better. And, you know, I hadn't got after him at all. And, I mean, he handled it just terrifically and bounced right back. And as we all saw, had a great second half.
Tim O'Malley is next.
Coach in the middle. You mentioned Bertrand. You have a rotation for almost everybody right now, and obviously the
Pretty
injuries.
much, yeah.
Obviously the injuries are why you have it for Bertrand. Can he sustain this, or do you have to find someone to give him some breaks?
No, he needs a break. We're hoping that Prince Colley provides that. We were expecting him to provide that, and then, you know, the wind blew in. And so, you know, I think it's just one of those things where I think all of our players, you know, it's a pretty big grind for us with back-to-back Big Ten games, you know, an outstanding football team in Cincinnati. Then we got to go down to Virginia Tech. It's a pretty good role. So making sure that the depth on our football team is utilized wisely is important in that position as well.
Hamilton might not be rotated for either going forward, I would think.
Yeah, he's just going to have to get water breaks.
I want to ask you about Isaiah Pryor because it seems he has found a
Yeah.
role that didn't exist for him last year.
Yeah, I agree. You know, good for Isaiah. I think he's played really good football for us. You know, his traits are such that from a physical standpoint, he can run. And Marcus has done a really good job of putting him in a position where he can succeed. You know, Jack is out there. We asked Jack to do a lot of things. We have found where Isaiah can impact the game the best, and he's playing to those particular strengths and doing a nice job for us.
You alluded to this just a minute ago, but the stretch of games you're just entering now, back-to-back Big Tens in Cincinnati, then beyond that, even USC and North Carolina. Over the next 6 weeks, I mean, can you kind of put in perspective how important this stretch is in terms of the bigger picture of your season?
Yeah, I don't know that we're looking at it from that perspective as much as the need to keep guys fresh and healthy and to continue to grow as a football team. This is, you know, we're watching it grow up in front of us, you know. I mean, they're learning each and every week. Practice is really important. The way we prepare, all the foundational principles that you really guys don't want to hear about. I'm excited about with this football team because each and every day they're learning how to prepare to be, you know, a championship football team. So, you know, regardless of, you know, how important the winning is, our process and how we go to work each and every day and how we handle things is more important to me.
You needed to see some things from your defense that I think you did see last Saturday. Going into another Big Ten game against a ranked team, like how important was that in terms of their progress?
Yeah, I mean, they need a little confidence boost too, right? I mean, but we tackled better. You know, our angles need to continue to get better. We got out-leveraged a couple of times on some tackles. We'll work on that again this week. But, you know, I think what Marcus did a really good job. And so I will say this. A lot of times what happens under those circumstances, you try to do too much, right? He really focused on the fundamentals, and that's really what we needed to do. We needed to be fundamentally better, gap discipline, you know, getting the ball down on the ground, you know, on-body coverage, you know, things that we weren't really very good against Toledo. We were much better against Purdue, and we'll need to be better against Wisconsin.
And Wisconsin doesn't make a whole lot of secrets about what they try and do offensively,
do
right?
not.
And there were times last season where you guys were kind of that way too. You know,
Yes.
Here's what we're going to do. As someone who's run that offense, what don't you want to see on the other side of the field? What's troublesome for that kind of offense?
Well, I mean, like anything else, is getting behind the chains. You know, I think, you know, negative plays, getting off, you know, from what you want to do, right? I mean, you get into second and long, and third and long is what, you know, troubled us the most. And so you want to stay on schedule. And so it's important to try to get them off schedule.
All right, your next question is going to be via Zoom. Tom Van Haren, you're up next.
Brian, I apologize if you've already been asked this before, but the oversight committee is looking at allowing you to go over the 25 initial counters by up to 7, depending on how many transfers you have leaving the program. If that were to happen, if they were to allow you to do that, how important is that for coaches right now to have that flexibility given the landscape?
Yeah, it's compensatory picks, I guess, right? I mean, you lose somebody, you get somebody back. I don't know that, it impacts us that severely. We've had some guys in the transfer portal, but they're generally getting their degrees and then moving on. So that doesn't generally occur at mid-semester for us. So I like the flexibility. I think it's a balancing act, certainly, that the NCAA is looking at right now. I support the legislation. I don't know how impactful it will be for us.
And your final question will also be from Zoom. Chris Heidel, you're up.
Hey, Coach Kelly, congratulations on the win last week.
Thank you.
I would just join in really early, really late in the press conference. I don't know if you talked about Wisconsin. What type of coach is Paul Chryst? Because I know you probably coached against him when he was at Pittsburgh.
Yes. Outstanding football coach. I would say this about Paul more than anything else is that, he is who he is. I mean, his football teams are smart. They're well coached. They're, physical at the point of attack. And they play a style of football that hasn't changed since he's been at Pittsburgh. And quite frankly, he's, from my perspective, he's one of the best coaches in the country because he stays true to that. He's consistent. He doesn't waver from what he believes in and what's important to him. And I applaud him for that. I have a lot of respect for him.
That's all the time we have. Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thanks, guys.